Chuck. What brings today for you?
Oh, hey, Marty. I don't know. I'm always reacting to your questions. So what are you going to ask me now?
What am I going to ask you? I'm going to ask you about one of the very first topics we ever spoke as. You can remember that first night we met.
Did it have to do with rum and sailors? I can't.
Well, in a way, it did have to do with rum and sailors in a way. That very first night, where we really didn't know each other, we were at a table together and we had just been introduced
At the charity dinner.
at the charity dinner. And you started telling me, because I asked you what you did, and you were telling me all about your new novel
Oh, yeah.
and that you had some writings. And I said, "Oh, really? I write too. How many do you have?" And you were like, "5." Okay. And I say 5 because this is not that long ago. This is under a year.
Right.
And what are we up to now? 8, 9?
7 published, 3 to go.
Right. Because my favorite question to ask of you privately is, what book have you finished today?
Okay. All right.
So, Chuck, what book have you published today and what's ready to come out?
Okay. Well, thank you for asking, Marty. For anybody who hasn't looked at my website, I published a novel. It was a military adventure called The Cohort. That was last year. And the sequel, because it's a 3-book trilogy. So book 2 is finished and has been sent to the publisher, and the publisher has finished blocking it. And all they're doing now, because I got an email first thing this morning saying, we're just looking at our release date and marketing because they might want to do something with cohort 1 before we launch cohort book 2, sort of to pique people's interests. I have no idea what they're talking about, but I gather, sometimes Amazon, which is where almost all of my sales are, sometimes Amazon will put the first book in a series at a reduced price to get people to buy it so that they then will buy the second book. So sometime in the next, I'm going to say, month, based on when we publish this, cohort 2 will be out, and it's a continuation of cohort 1, sort of, because cohort 1 was, a lot of it was building this small special operations unit, and they had a couple of missions, and now they've been given another mission, but this one's different. This one's not like the previous mission, and it goes in a direction that I hope will come as a surprise to the reader. But as I say, it's book 2 of a trilogy, and I've already written parts of book 3. In the meantime, I am editing, along with my publisher, co-editing, a book on Canadian policy that we have 23 authors. 6 of us are ex-military. Everybody else is either a diplomat or a senior civil servant or a professor. So everybody's been allowed to write on their own area of expertise, and it's things like, what should the Canadian Armed Forces look like in 10 years? What should the Army look like? What should the Air Force look like? But also, what should Canada's policy for the North be? How should Canada rebuild its relationship with the United States? What do we do with a resurgent or a surging China? So this is what I'm editing. I've got about 6 of them done of the 21, and then we'll block that out and we'll release that, we hope, sometime near the end of March. So pure policy stuff. I don't think it'll make the New York Times bestseller list, but certainly topical. That's why we're pushing for speed. And I have another novel that is currently being edited, which won't see the light of day, I don't think, until the fall, which is a totally standalone novel based on my life as an armored commander, and it's war fiction, Ukraine war. And this is an exclusive for you, Marty. You heard it here first. I'm actually doing something I've never done before, which is I'm taking my expertise in military theory and I'm fictionalizing it.
Mm.
So I'm not going to tell you more than that because
Oh,
I'm trying to tease, and this book won't be out for probably a year. So,
I love that. So, as you know, even as a child, I loved watching Star Trek and Star Wars. And why did I love those? I didn't know this word at the time, but certainly years later, when I came to understand Jungian theory, that what they were using was didactic storytelling.
yes.
They had messages that they wanted to get out, whether you're talking about Roddenberry or Lucas, and they were using their science fiction characters as the way to get these messages across.
Yes.
Sometimes referred to as the message today, and sometimes pushed as a message today.
Right.
But you had a message.
I did.
So, what was maybe some of the genesis of your message, and how did that translate from? Because you have hundreds of hours of teaching.
Yes.
How did you translate that and go, I want to make a story out of this?
We're talking about my novel.
You're not any of your novels.
Well, the genesis was in many ways um, fictionalizing how I was brought up, because the novel, the original novel, and almost all of the second novel is the same theme: trust. Without trust, you cannot build relationships, and without relationships, you cannot conduct military operations. That's my expertise, but I'm sure that if I had grown up and become, a vice president of a multinational, and I wanted to write a novel about it, it would be the same story. It would be, yeah, we grew this company from nothing to become a multinational, and it was all based on trust. And when that trust was broken, we lost our clients, and we had problems. We had to rebuild it. So, in many ways more than me, Marty, because you were an NCO. That sometimes we talk a lot about leadership and trust, but not all of our leaders, whether they're senior, junior, intermediate leaders, fully comprehend how important trust is in any leadership relationship. So that's what my message is. So to grab a line from the cover of the first novel, it's the protagonist uh, uses the eternal truths taught to him by his father. Trust, honor, and the other one escapes me at the moment. But he builds a small organization, 24 people, based on trust, comradeship, friendship, and he translates all of those things into actions and successful operations.
Uh, Again, I love where you're going. As coach, my brain just absolutely flew to Stephen Covey, because Stephen Covey's got
Yes.
a number of different pieces on trust.
Yes.
He talks about levels of trust, being trustworthy, having interpersonal trust, or what you just referred to as trust and honor, empowerment, giving others the power to do things, alignment, keeping the organization in the same space. But you also brought in friendship, and I love that because friendships is kind of outside of those pieces. And what I was thinking about in that moment, and I remember reading your book and thinking this, in the military, we have implicit and explicit trust.
Yes, that's right.
And there's sort of an implicit trust that whatever the gold is on the person in front of you, that you implicitly trust them.
Right.
But we also have explicit, where we know that was not in the best interest. And sometimes that could be at a unit level. Sometimes that could be at a personal level. Sometimes that could be at a political level.
Yes.
Or a theoretical level, where we look at something and go, I don't understand that.
Right.
But trust in your novel is absolutely central.
Yes.
Because without trust, or with the absence of trust, Trust makes everything that's good in the novel possible without giving anything away. And the lack of trust is what creates this essential conflict
Right.
that the team has to deal with.
Yes, that's true.
What is it about trust that's so important for you? And what was so important for you about that trust as a military leader?
That's a tough one to answer, Marty, because it is so fundamental. It's sort of like trying to describe a color to a blind person. What's your frame of reference? So, trust is an anchor for me. And I was brought up to believe that it, it was everything. It was the foundation stone. No trust, no ability to move forward. Because without trust, then even something that is transactional can't be accomplished. I remember having an English prof in first year at Royal Military College who was a sessional. They had run out of professors. Our class was big, and they brought a guy in from Queens who was not entirely well suited to teach cadets. Right? He, but he was, he was a very gentle individual. And I remember him explaining to us one day that he said, "I'd like you to write me a 1,000-word essay." Now, I remember in first year having been an engineering student, 1,000-word essay seemed like a mountain too high to climb. Yeah, 1,000-word essay right now takes me less time than it does to have a glass of milk. It's just right. You learn to do things. And so we said, "Well, professor, are you going to hand this out as an assignment?" He said, "I just did. I just told you." Oh, okay. He said, I know it's making you uncomfortable because you've been indoctrinated in the last 8 months into the military." But he says, "But it's not just the military. North American Western culture is the only culture that insists on having written contracts." He said, indigenous peoples would speak to each other, right? And then either they would clasp arms or hands or give each other a hug or just nod at each other. And that was it. You were locked in for life because you had agreed to this, right? And I thought, I never actually thought of that. We have to write everything down because, trust each other. Good friends don't write things down. Are you going to come over to the house for supper on Friday? Yeah. Well, wait a second. Let me write this out as a contract because if you don't show up, then you're in trouble, right? So, yeah, trust is foundational, deeply foundational.
Well, I say that, and I will explicitly say thank you because we have an implicit trust. We have no contract. We have no express thing that we've said we're going to absolutely do, except when we say we're going to do a podcast, I could set the universe clock by your attendance.
But Marty, there's something that a lot of non-military, I won't say civilian, non-military people are, they're in awe of those of us that have friends and contacts and buddies that we served with. And sometimes we didn't serve with them long. Sometimes we just went through recruit training together. Sometimes we served with them for years. And we have built relationships with these people that, as you say, it has become an implicit bond, a trust. You can count on that person. And we use the term in sociology that these people have bonded under hardship. But what does that mean? That they've bonded under hardship? It means that when things get rough, right, when the weather turns horrible, or you are low on food, or you've hurt yourself and you need somebody to help you get out of this tough situation, that person or those people that you bonded with, who you didn't know 8 weeks ago, you turn to them and you know that they're going to take care of you. And then you pass out because you're in pain or you're wounded. And you don't think, well, I'm going to pass out and die. You think to yourself, I'm going to let go now. And when I wake up, someone will be taking care of me. Right? It's trust.
I love how you talk about that trust because that's the trust you form in basic training. That's the trust you form when you come to a new unit.
Right.
Um, but you know, I work in a lot of talent management, and I was having a conversation with a commander friend of mine the other day, uh, who's transitioning to leaving the military,
Okay.
and we were having a conversation about coaching. And one of the first things that I had to bring up was, and I'll use this language, the indoctrination of leadership.
Hmm.
And it's not because I think military leadership is good or bad. It just has a doctrine to it.
Mm-hmm.
That as someone with a doctorate in leadership, you know there's more to leadership than just that doctrine.
Yes.
And as someone with a coaching background, I never want to take away from military doctrine, but I always say it's a little incomplete from the scope of all things leadership.
Yes.
And it's hard sometimes to think outside that scope because we are so doctrinal with that scope.
Yes, that's true.
And I would say, bringing it back to your novel,
Okay.
that in that novel, you are seeing parts of leadership and parts of trust that are and are not explicit or implicit, because
Yeah.
life doesn't play the same game
Hmm.
that Brigade does.
Right. Right.
And you did a very good job of writing about that. So maybe with some of our time left, talk about writing about when trust doesn't work.
Well, that's so painful when you trust someone and they let you down. And of course, the first thing you have to think about is, did that individual let me down on purpose, or was that individual stopped from keeping that promise by external forces?
Mm.
And so the next step is, if you can ascertain, or you give them the benefit of the doubt because you did have that trust, then you learn to forgive. I mean, someone arrives late, someone doesn't go at all, someone promised that they would support you and they don't. And then you have to make the decision. Is my lifelong relationship with this individual at an end? Or am I going to forgive that person because that person did their best, but they just weren't able to keep the promise? Because, a lot of people make promises that they intend to keep, but something happens, or what's the old expression? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I like to think that people are basically good, and that occasionally they do things that are beneath them, as opposed to people are bad and they pretend to be good to get what they want. Right. But, your comment about Jungian psychology and telling stories didactically. Yeah, in fact, when I wrote my first draft to the novel, and it was a voyage of discovery, because I just assumed that because I like to talk, I could write. Well, I could write academically, having written 3 theses, including a PhD, which was what a pain. And but what I couldn't write was a novel. So I thought, well, I'll just try telling a story. So I did that, and I thought, wow, this is brilliant. And then, the editor looked at it and went, nah, there's an awful lot of fluff here. We got to get rid of this, and because you go down so many rabbit holes, the reader is going to fall asleep. So I think I may have mentioned to you, my first draft, when I got it back from the editor, let's see, I think I handed him a 96,000 word draft. And after I had applied all of his comments, I had taken out 40,000 words. And so I had to build it back up to 90,000, sent it to a new editor. The new editor did the same thing to me, and I had to chop out 35,000 more words. So it was a real learning experience for me until I finally got to where my editors, plural, and I agreed, okay, we're ready to go to print. But even then, my editor said, your novel is really dialogue heavy. And I was like, really? He said, yeah, your characters like to talk. And I said, okay, I'm going to take that as a compliment, not as a criticism, because, a couple of my friends that read the novel phoned me or emailed me and said, This novel is like a screenplay, right? There's not a whole lot of storytelling. It's a whole lot of dialogue. And I said, well, that's the way my brain works. My brain works as me talking to people and people talking back to me. So, but it was definitely a learning process. But certainly the second one was easier than the first one. And this third one that I've started is easier still. It's just a skill.
So, with a few minutes left to go, maybe talk a little bit because you've got 4 different novels I'm hearing here.
Okay.
Because that's news to me too, by the way. Listener, I ask often.
Actually, 4. Yeah, 4. Yeah, and the fifth one started. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you've got, I'm just trying to think, published now 6?
7 books, but
The 6 nonfiction.
6 nonfiction.
6 nonfiction
Not
with other nonfiction on the way.
correct.
Okay. So my question would be then, if one is very, and I like the way you just said it, is dialogue heavy. Dialogue is what we're trying to tell trying to tell the audience.
Yeah.
Your nonfiction is you just telling the audience.
That's right. It's me lecturing on paper.
It's you lecturing on paper. And I've read 3 of your books, so I know that they're quite good. And I'll say this as a listener or as a reader, I can hear your voice in both.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
I can hear your voice in both. What, if anything, have you learned about yourself that you didn't expect to learn from writing all these books, fiction or not?
Well, to be glib, that I'm verbose.
Yeah.
Although I know how to be, I know how to be curt. But I was, it was funny as a young officer. I was too brief. I was too taciturn. I would write memos and my bosses would send them back and say, yeah, can you pad this out a little bit? I mean, I read this and you're shouting at me, I mean, do this, and this, and get back to me tomorrow. Um, so, oh, okay. So, you have to strike a happy medium. I don't think I'm there yet. I think I got lots of learning left to do on how to move towards a more comfortable balance between dialogue and directive narrative. And, interestingly, my publisher is himself working on a PhD in postmodernist literature. Don't ask me to describe what that is. He's tried. My brain doesn't go there. But so he himself is still learning, and he keeps promising to send me his PhD dissertation when he gets it finished. I'm fascinated because it's a story wrapped within a story, wrapped within a story that's part of another story. I'm like, my brain's already broken. I got to read this. So
one final question.
Yes, sir.
If you could have a collaboration with any author on the planet,
Ooh.
fictional or otherwise, what would your fantasy team up be?
Well, the two that I would, if I had a fantasy dinner party, it was just me and a couple of other guys where we could get together and write a story. The 2 people, I would invite 3 people. One of them is alive. I don't even know where he lives. And he goes by the name of Trevanian. He wrote the Eiger Sanction, and a bunch of other books. I've read them all. He's got a knack. And the other 2 are both dead. And that's James Clavell, who wrote Shogun and who wrote The Noble House. And of course, I would, if I had to pick just one, then it would be John le Carré. John le Carré can bring to life on a page writing that it grabs you and it doesn't let you go. I'm just drawn into it. Would love to learn how to hold a reader's attention the way John le Carré did.
Well, thank you, Chuck. And for our listeners, we don't ever sponsor here, but if you have an opportunity to swing by and check out some of Chuck's books, I highly, highly recommend it. You're going to enjoy
You're making me blush here, buddy. This isn't a podcast; it's a commercial.
it. For you, anytime. Have a wonderful day.
Cheers, buddy.